Well, hello everyone. On behalf of the Johns Hopkins International Injury Research Unit, I'd like to welcome you to this first event that we're having this year. The aim for this event is to take stock of where we are in terms of road safety. There has been a lot of global attention to road safety over the past decade, and we're nearing the end of this decade next year. So what we hope to do is start a discussion that will not necessarily end today. We can't necessarily cover every topic today or answer every question today. But we hope to start a conversation that will go on and help us understand what we've achieved, what challenges we've faced, and how we can overcome those challenges in the coming year and hopefully in the coming decade as well. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Heath Elliott, the Associate Dean for External Affairs here at the school, for a welcome to our guests.
Thank you, Abdul. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Heath Elliott. I'm the Associate Dean for External Affairs, and I have some welcome remarks and primarily a lot of thank yous. So let me start with the welcome. Welcome to the Bloomberg School of Public Health. On behalf of Dean McKenzie, who is actually traveling, so she missed the snow experience. She's in the Galapagos Islands, so in a very different sort of setting at the moment. On behalf of the Dean, on behalf of myself and the Bloomberg School, and on behalf of the Center, I want to welcome you all. And I have some formal remarks, so forgive me for looking at my notes because I want to make sure I get everything correct. The first, though, is to start with a thank you. And we want to thank Michael Bloomberg and the Bloomberg Philanthropies for their support across the board. The Bloomberg Philanthropies have been tremendous supporters of the school, of the university, and the center. So it seems appropriate to start this sort of a session with a thank you. And we're so happy to have Kelly Larson here with us on behalf of the philanthropies. So welcome and thank you, Kelly. Also want to acknowledge some of the partners that work with the center. As a World Health Organization collaborating center for injuries, violence, and accidents prevention, IIRU, utilizes research, collaboration, and training to identify effective solutions to the growing burdens of injury in low and middle-income countries, influence public policy and practice, and advance the field of injury prevention throughout the world. And it's in thanks to the unit's long-standing working relationship with the WHO and PAHO that the team of international experts is able to conduct such impactful work across the globe. We'd like to welcome back to the school Dr. Than Tran, to East Baltimore. Dr. Tran is a graduate of the Bloomberg School and has earned 2 degrees, including his PhD in health systems. While in Baltimore, Dr. Tran trained with the Center for Injury Research and Policy and later helped establish IIRU. Am I getting that right, IIRU? Okay, just want to make sure. Even though this place is filled with an acronym. Good. Now Dr. Tran is the coordinator of UNI International Injury Prevention, and we look forward to hearing his perspective on today's topics. So welcome. As you'll soon hear, the city of Fortaleza, Brazil, stands as a shining example of road safety efforts. Mayor Roberto Claudio is an outstanding example of a public health professional who put his knowledge to practice just with the aim of saving lives. Mayor Claudio could not be with us here today. He had to travel back due to an emergency situation in the city. Nonetheless, we're grateful to have the Executive Secretary for Conservation and Public Service, Luis Alberto Sampaio, welcome, who has been a key partner to the mayor on the transformation of the city to become friendlier for all vulnerable road users. And finally, just a few highlights on the Sustainable Development Goals. In 2015, the United Nations General Assembly set the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, to commit countries to 17 broad goals that would ensure the sustainable development of our global society. While the SDGs commitment of having or cutting in half road deaths by 2020 will not be achieved, we should still put our sights in what is feasible and what we will do next to achieve the goal by the year 2030. The public health community has been able to reduce communicable diseases in the last decade mainly through vertical programs, but now we are facing a new challenge, the increasing incidence of non-communicable diseases. And just to note, Dean McKenzie and I and members of our board traveled to Africa just this past fall and had the chance to meet with ministers of health in Ethiopia and Tanzania and Rwanda. And the topic of non-communicable diseases was a top priority for all of them. So this is an emerging issue, emerging burden. Among them, of course, is road injuries, which requires a multi-sectorial approach. Every year, road injuries kill more than 1.3 million people across the globe. That's the equivalent of the entire population of Ireland. And many more are left with life-changing injuries and disabilities. More exemplary and multi-sectorial efforts, like the ones these institutions represent, are what is needed to strengthen public health leadership in road safety, but more generally, non-communicable diseases around the world. So again, I welcome you all, look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for that. So we have our invited panelists who are going to help us. We're going to help guide the discussion. I invite all of you to also pitch in with any questions you might have. What we'll do is we'll invite the panelists here. I'll start with a few questions, and we can keep the discussion going that way. So I'd like to first invite Kelly Larson, who's the program director for Bloomberg Philanthropies, who heads the road safety initiative or road safety efforts that the philanthropies run. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you. Louise, welcome as well. Louise, as you heard, is the Executive Secretary for Conservation and Public Services. He guides the road safety efforts. He helps the mayor implement the road safety policies in Fortaleza. So welcome, Louise. Dr. Eugenia Rodriguez, welcome as well. Dr. Eugenia Rodriguez is the Regional Advisor for Road Safety Risk Assessment, Sustainable Development, and Environmental Health at the Pan American Health Organization. And last but not least, I'd like to invite Dr. Nan Tran, who's the Coordinator for Unintentional Injuries at the World Health Organization, to join us up here. So as I said at the beginning, we have had remarkable attention to road safety over the past 10 years or so. We are in the global, the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety. There's never been a time when there has been so much attention and investments in road safety. And we'd like to use this panel as a start to a discussion on kind of assessing where we are within the UN Decade of Action, how we have done in terms of achieving our goals, what challenges we're facing, and what comes next. Do we just stop here or do we go on? So Nan, I'd like to first congratulate you on the launch of the Global Status Report on Road Safety last month. It is a very useful resource for all of us working on road safety. It does a good job, and now you also have an app that goes with it, which provides us information on our fingertips. But what it also does, it highlights that we will not reach the goal or the target set. So SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal 3.6, which was to have road traffic deaths by the year 2020 will not be reached. Does that mean that the road safety community has failed in this effort?
A very provocative question, Abdul. Thanks. So perhaps let me start by just reflecting a bit. It was here at this institution, I guess 16 years ago, 15 years ago, that I actually got involved in road safety. It was at Hopkins where I actually became interested in road safety and actually started working in this field. And in 2002, I don't think any one of us here or that would have imagined that we would be talking about a sustainable development goal on road safety, that there actually would be an SDG target 3.6 to reduce road traffic deaths. At that time, we were still talking about road safety as a sort of as a niche sort of topic, that it was something that nobody cared about, and that's why we felt the need to really get more attention. So I think that the fact that we even have a road safety target within the SDG agenda is in and of itself a remarkable achievement, and that I think we should take credit for, because it's thanks to the work that has happened over the last 10, 15 years that there has been this global movement, that there has been a global recognition that as part of a development agenda, road safety needs to be addressed. I think that is in itself quite a successful achievement. Now, I mean, there are a lot of perspectives on why the SDG targets for 3.6 was actually set for 2020 instead of 2030. But I think, the point of having these global targets, is not necessarily to say that if you don't reach it, that it's a failure. I think, the purpose of having targets is really to encourage and motivate work towards the attainment. Even if we never reach it, it doesn't mean that we failed. I mean, I think that the point of it is to say that we need to reach it, and it's an aspirational target. So I think it's okay from that perspective to say that even if there's a target that's not attained, it still means that we need to work on it. But I do think, Abdul, that the question of whether or not we have done all that we can, or that we should continue in the direction that we have, is important to address. And I do think that if we think about the progress that has been achieved in the last 10 years in the Decade of Action, and we think about what actually needs to happen moving forward, I do think that there are some important learnings. And I'd like to reflect on 3 quick things. One, I think it's been very clear that political commitment and political will is extremely important. And it's so nice to have the political leadership from cities such as Bogota and Fortaleza here to share how that happens. But I think that part of that is really about the importance of political leadership in terms of engaging a wide variety of sectors. As you rightly said, and as Heath has said in his opening remarks, road safety is an issue that requires multi-sectoral engagement. And I think to the extent that we've talked a lot about the need for multi-sectoral engagement, I don't think we've been as effective in actually making that happen. And I think part of that is because we still talk about road safety in the context of interventions. We say, here are X, Y, and Z interventions, and we ourselves at the WHO have put together technical packages that say these are the best things that we can do. And obviously, those are important things to do, but we also recognize the need that we have to move beyond just thinking about it in interventions and actually engaging other sectors. And by that, I mean, I don't think that the automobile industry should be involved in road safety interventions. I think that the automobile industries need to be involved in doing what they're good at, which is building automobiles and making automobiles safer. I don't think that alcohol industry should be involved in safety. I do think the alcohol industry has a role to play in the sales and production and how they market it to ensure that the right users are not getting access to alcohol. So the point that I'm making is that I think we've been talking a lot about road safety interventions, and we haven't been able to engage other sectors because I think we're asking them to join in road safety efforts, when what we ought to do is encourage the other sectors to take responsibility for the things that they should be doing. And that means automobile makers should be making safer cars. I don't want Volvo to give us money to make roads safer. I want Volvo to actually invest in making cars safer. And let me give you a very concrete example of a discussion we had recently. A few weeks ago, we were talking with the European Commission about vehicle safety, and there's a lot of talk about technologies and so forth. And it came up that a lot of new cars now have essentially iPads in the dashboard because everything is, so connected. And the priority for car makers right now is to make everything connected. But what that means is that they have created a whole panel of distraction for drivers. So in order to operate the radio or operate the thing, you're having to do this and this while you're still driving. And that just brought to attention the fact that, again, here's an example. We want car makers to make cars safer. We want car makers to think about safety when they're making their cars. And that's what they should be doing, but they're not. And I think sometimes, when we talk about road safety, we're still saying, yes, we need to engage with other sectors. But part of what we really need to be doing is holding other sectors accountable for what they ought to be doing to ensure that road safety as a system, the system of safety is there. And I think that's lacking. So I think that that's one of the things that needs to happen differently is the way we talk about road safety is the way that we engage with other people in a different way, and that there needs to be greater accountability. And the last point that I will just make very quickly is that I think that data is extremely important. And in the report, as you know, we highlight two different statistics. We highlight the statistics that are reported by governments, and we also highlight a statistic which represents the estimates for the number of actual road traffic fatalities that we generate. And in some countries, this is a marginal difference. In other countries, it's extreme. In China, the reported numbers are 56,000, and WHO estimates are 58,000, and WHO estimates are 256,000. And I raise that point not to pick on China, but I raise that point to highlight the fact that if we want political commitment, the number of deaths that are recognized by a government make an extremely, is extremely important in determining how much priority that issue gets. So if in a country is recognizing 58,000 deaths, which puts China at a rate of death of about 4 per 100,000 population, it's not going to be a priority when you compare it to other leading causes of death. But if you recognize 300,000 deaths, it changes the way you prioritize the issue. So I think that the political commitment, the data that supports that, and also how we talk about that really matters a lot.
Nan, thank you. Thank you for that. You raise a lot of very good points. And I'm sure all of us can acknowledge that while we haven't reached the target globally, collectively, there might be some examples around the world where we've been able to achieve the issues you just talked about. Do you know of any good examples or key issues that other countries could replicate?
I think there are lots of good, yes, I think there's, and I think you'll hear that, for example, at the city level in terms of Fortaleza and their reductions. But I think we've also seen progress on a number of fronts. We see a lot more countries actually having national strategies for road safety. We see more and more countries that actually have lead institutions that are actually putting in place policies. We have seen tremendous improvements in terms of number of countries that are making progress, making changes to the road safety legislation, for example. And in part, I think, without taking credit for that, I think in part, by highlighting areas and gaps, where countries, laws are not meeting best practice, it's a way of encouraging countries to say, okay, for example, Spain recently changed, in the last report, they were, their helmet laws, for example, were not meeting best practice because it didn't require people to fasten the helmets. And now they've made changes to that. I met with a parliamentarian from Ukraine recently who was very proud of the fact that they've reduced their speed limits in urban areas to 50 kilometers an hour. So I think that there's a lot of positive examples of where change has been made. I think the challenge still remains that we're not seeing the progress at scale. And the question for us, I think, at this time is to think about where can we really scale up these efforts in a systematic way. I think if you talk to our colleagues here, we can all identify some examples of projects or cities or even a few countries where there's been really good progress. But what we've not been able to do is to show that this progress is being scaled up systematically and at a level where we can start to see the reductions. The report basically has shown that we have managed to stabilize the trends in terms of the number of deaths over the last 15 years. And when you factor in the growth in population, when you factor in the growth in the number of motor vehicles in the world, that's actually not a bad thing because we've managed to actually keep the rates from going up despite the fact that there's more people with more cars. So that's actually a very positive sign. But in order to really get to the next stage, which is to really change the trend, I think we have to do more, and I think we have to think about a different way of working.
Okay, well, with that, I'd like to turn to Luis. As we've mentioned, Fortaleza has been a really good example of improvements in road safety under the leadership of Mayor Roberto Claudio. One of the things that Nan mentioned is the necessity of having multi-sectoral engagement, and that's often very difficult to do given the sometimes seemingly competing goals of different sectors. How have you been able to tackle that in Fortaleza to bring the different agencies and sectors together to work on road safety?
First of all, thank you for being here on behalf of our mayor. It's an honor for us to represent Fortaleza And I have to thank you, Johns Hopkins and Bloomberg, for all the support that you have gave us in the past 4 years. And I ask your permission to speak in Portuguese in order to better explain my ideas, okay?
Totally.
And I will count on Patricia's help.
I know that you can speak very good English.
Yeah, you're kidding. Eu tenho que dizer que o que você colocou realmente acontece. As agências muitas vezes competem entre si e não há uma colaboração efetiva. Mas a solução para superar esse problema parte de uma questão básica, que é o prefeito estabelecer a liderança e estabelecer esse tema na sua escala de prioridades como um tema absolutamente prioritário.
I have to agree with you that the competition and the different agendas of the agencies might. I have a mic. I have a mic. Thank you. It happens, but I must say that what you've already mentioned as well, like the commitment and the desire and the will of the mayor in establishing goals and different policies and setting up the goals that he wants, that really makes a big difference.
E não é fácil, porque para que o prefeito de uma cidade como Fortaleza estabeleça segurança viária como um tema prioritário na agenda, é necessário que haja coragem, porque no mindset das pessoas, segurança viária sempre, pelo menos é o caso de Fortaleza e das cidades brasileiras, foi um tema secundário.
In a city like Fortaleza, in order to establish road safety as a priority, it is something very difficult, because in people's mindset, this has always been a secondary issue. It's not in people's priorities. So it takes courage from the mayor.
E até que a cidade, que o prefeito e a cidade consiga obter suporte da população, isso demanda tempo. Mas, voltando para a questão central da sua pergunta, eu acho que a grande forma de você obter a colaboração multissetorial é realmente o prefeito sinalizar de forma efetiva que esse é um tema absolutamente importante para a cidade. Só para dar um exemplo, Fortaleza, até 5 anos atrás, das 5 principais causas de morte, 4 estavam relacionadas de alguma forma com mobilidade urbana. Então, você tinha a primeira, que era criminalidade, a segunda e a terceira, doenças cardiovasculares, infarto e AVC, a quarta e a quinta eram doenças respiratórias e a quinta, acidentes de trânsito. Então, das 5 principais causas de morte em Fortaleza, 5 anos atrás, 4 tinham relação direta com mobilidade urbana. E, mesmo assim, a mobilidade urbana na cidade não era reconhecido como um tema de saúde pública, então, que tem uma relação forte com saúde pública.
Okay. In order to get support from the population, from the people, from the citizens to this issue, it really takes a little bit of time, so people can understand that road safety is a priority. In the case of Fortaleza, the 5 main death causes in the city, the first one was crime, the second one was cardio, second and third were cardio and lung diseases, and the fifth one was accidents due to mobility problems, and people wouldn't take that into consideration, and it really takes a lot of commitment and clear drive from the mayor to organize the subject and make the multi-sectorial agencies work together.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. And what I want to probe a little further is how were you able to then prioritize this? What are some key factors that helped you achieve this?
Eu acho que existem 4 fatores. Okay, I'm trying to speak in English.
Excellent.
I think that there are 4 key factors, at least in Fortaleza, in the case of Fortaleza. The first one is the political commitment of the mayor. And as Patricia said, he has to be very courageous and
brave
to establish this theme in the top of the agenda. The second one, I think it's to have a very good technical team. I mean, a passionate, motivated team. I think it makes all the difference because they not only work, they not only do what they have to do because they have to do, but because they love to do. So I think it's very important. The third key factor is to open the city to the world and to learn from the best experiences, but also from the bad experiences. And you have to look to the small cities, medium cities, big cities, and also learn from institutions like Johns Hopkins, Bloomberg, and so forth. It's very important. And the fourth, and maybe the most difficult one, is to get support from the society. And it's a process. So I think that those 4 key factors combined, they can change the mindset, the situation, and put the city in motion to move forward, to achieve success.
Right, and I totally agree with you. I mean, some of the things you've mentioned are those intangibles that we really need. You know, the personal commitment to this issue that many of the people working on this issue have, that really drive them to come to work every day and focus on these issues. And often people talk about getting buy-in from the community, and it's good to hear that it's a process. It's not easy to get. So you have to start somewhere and keep working on it to get that. One of the things you highlighted was learning from the bad examples or from the challenges that others have had. What challenges have you faced in Fortaleza during this process?
A lot of challenges, but maybe there is still a challenge is to change the mindset not only of the population but also from the technicians, some technicians in the city hall, because we don't have all the people, all the technicians in the city hall thinking the same way. Some people. I'm going to go back to Portuguese now. Algumas pessoas, você tem a prefeitura com várias cabeças, e algumas pensam de uma forma e outras pensam de outra. Então, há um desafio muito grande de mudar a cabeça dessas pessoas e fazê-las entender que, essencialmente, a agenda de mobilidade urbana e segurança viária é uma agenda de saúde pública. Eu acho que esse é um grande desafio.
There are many people in the city hall, in the city administration, and some think and all of them may think in different ways. So to get everyone to take urban mobility and road safety as a public health issue is very difficult. It is a big challenge. A história da bicicleta. A bicicleta é bacana.
E um outro desafio que eu gostaria de ressaltar também é como obter o apoio da sociedade civil organizada.
How to obtain the support from the civil society.
Yeah, especially from the universities, the academia.
Academia.
Porque muitas vezes a universidade, a academia, pode contribuir de uma forma muito mais efetiva, advogando pela causa e não somente na teoria, mas advogando pela causa de uma forma muito efetiva. A academia, ela pode influenciar como formadora de opinião todo um conjunto de instâncias da sociedade. E isso, na realidade brasileira, ainda se vê pouco. Tem exceções. Temos aqui professores que são advogados da causa, mas ainda, acho que isso pode ter um avanço muito forte ainda em Fortaleza, a engajar a academia nesse processo como advogada da causa.
To engage the academia in the process is still a challenge in Fortaleza. Because the academia forms everyone else's opinion. It's very important to change people's mindset. So if the academia would understand and make the advocacy for the cause, it would be much easier.
E eu acho que o último desafio que eu gostaria de ressaltar é a importância de traduzir esse tema de segurança viária em ações concretas. The importance of translate this subject, road safety, in concrete actions to the real life of the people. Right. I mean, they need to see cycle paths and bus lanes and raised crosswalks in order they can realize the importance for their lives, you know. Yeah. So it's a challenge. It's very important to get support from the population. When they see, they believe.
Right. So you have to take actions and steps to show them that this is working.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, I'd like to turn to another issue that Nan, you raised, and maybe this is a question that all our panelists can contribute to. You mentioned the importance of the use of evidence, or generating evidence, but that's not the same as getting it used. What are some of the challenges in getting or translating that evidence to either action or policy, and what are examples of success that we've seen in which we've been able to enhance the use of evidence for road safety?
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting us as Pan American Health Organization to be here. It's a pleasure to be with my colleagues and some old friends here and colleagues from Brazil as well. And so I think the challenge, so I agree with both my colleagues that talked before, and so I think this engagement with the other sectors of society, and so to show that evidence, to have more actors with us, and so we were talking about it, to put the academia with us. And so just talk about the health sector, and talk about children restraints, for instance. We have a big agenda in health sector at the primary health care, and so we're not talking the primary health care, how can we have to transport our children, for instance, how to put together this recommendation that we have in our agenda for immunization, how can we join to how to provide the safety mobility for children, for elderly, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that's a big challenge, just not to work in a segmental or in kind of silos. And I also would say that good experience that, to add what Tuna mentioned, some good experience that we have, and so have more commitment, have more agents in our countries, we have some progress where we have more stable numbers of that or rates. But still, we are doing a good job with the media, with the journalists. We are providing some trainings for journalists, and so that's a way that we work with the Bloomberg support also for this training. And so that's a new actor that work with us to understand the evidence. And so I would say that's a way to have more advocates for us in this issue as well. And the civil society, we have some NGOs that are working on road safety, and so to build capacity, to work close with them, to provide the evidence to these actors and to help us to move forward. So have good concrete example in the region. I would mention one of the NGOs that we have in Uruguay in this region that work with these children with strength. And so they provide with evidence that will help us as university support, with CDC support, with Johns Hopkins support. So they have better materials. They have better materials to provide to everybody how to transport in this specific issue to talking about the children. That's one of the, as evidence can achieve other sectors. I would say academia, with other professionals, with other health sector, NGOs, and the media, as a good example that we have been working in this region. So just to mention a few.
Well, that's some good examples.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly. So you haven't heard from me yet. I thought I'd reintroduce myself, and thanks, Abdul, and everyone for having me here today. I want to talk about evidence more in a practical manner. I mean, at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we follow the evidence. So the evidence is basically what works, what's been proven to work in road safety. We have some real advantages because we have the evidence that demonstrates what we can do to reduce fatalities and injuries on the road. And I think that often in the work that we're doing through the cities and the countries where we're working, we can often get distracted by activities that people may find a little more interesting, like, say, distracted driving, which is clearly a problem, but we don't really have the evidence of what we can do to specifically reduce distracted driving. There have been a number of studies, and I think more research needs to be done. Countries have implemented specific policies that haven't necessarily worked. So from our perspective, we're trying to have the biggest impact, and we focus on those activities, whether it be the 4 risk factors, helmet use, drinking and driving, speed, and seatbelts, to really demonstrate that you can have an impact by focusing on those interventions where the evidence supports them.
Just to add to what both Kelly and Eugenia have said, I think one of the challenges that we are facing now, if I look at where we are as a global community in terms of our progress made towards road safety, I think what we've been able to do is we've been able to show interventions that work, as Kelly mentioned. So we have, good laws that work. We have, in the report, for example, we highlighted a case study in Zambia whereby improvements in the infrastructure around schools in Lusaka actually resulted in fewer children being killed because they reduced speed and they had proper footpaths and so forth for the children to walk. So that's an example of an intervention that has been proven to be both efficacious in principle and in theory, but also to be effective in practice. The problem is that we face now is to take that intervention and translate it to a scaled up model. So if we ask ourselves, what does it mean to scale up an intervention like that? Does it mean that we're going to go around fixing all of these infrastructure around school zones? I think the answer is no. I think that this is where we're stuck because a lot of what we see working as interventions when scaled up actually do not translate the same way. Actually, what you want to do is ensure that people who are designing the urban environment, people that are designing the school zones, actually put in place appropriate measures to begin with. So what this is basically we're talking about a system or systems around the world that are broken, that are flawed to begin with. And so right now, our approach has been is to go in and fix those areas where there's broken. So we go in and we say, that school in Lusaka is really dangerous, and look at all of the roads around them, look at the high speed limits. But if you want to actually take that to scale, we don't have the capacity to actually go around and fix all of these school zones. What we actually want to be advocating for, and this is what I started off by saying, is those people that are responsible for the urban planning, for the school zone, the authorities that have responsibility for the school zones, to actually put into place appropriate measures to begin with. And that means that it's not advocating for a replication or multiple interventions. It's actually advocating for changes in the way that the system works. So what we ought to be advocating for is why is the system as it exists now? Why do we allow urban planners to put inappropriate speed limits around schools? Right? If you think about countries where this has worked, it's not because we have gone in and done interventions post facto. It's because they have recognized that, okay, in order to improve the safety of well-being of children, that we need to think about these things not as interventions, but that should be a consideration that urban planners take into account to begin with. And it's the same thing for people that design roads. I mean, if you look in the report, it's shocking that you have roads that are being built with the primary goal of facilitating motorized transport. Roads should be built to facilitate mobility by all road users, including bicyclists and pedestrians. So it shouldn't be the case that we have to go in afterwards and say, okay, we have to ensure interventions that ensure protection for bicyclists. And I think that's the struggle. It's not a criticism, it's a struggle because we're trying to deal with systems that are fundamentally flawed and we're seeing it. And our response, what we can do now is to do interventions and test them, and we show that they're effective in small scale, at small scale. And we show that they're effective in pilots. The challenge we have is actually taking those and bringing them up to scale, because that requires us not to focus on interventions. It requires us to change the way that the systems are working. And I have said this before, I think that what we need to be saying is that if people valued safety, and it's not just the people here, public health people, it means that the urban planners, it means that the infrastructure developers, it means that the people that plan parks are thinking about safety. And the analogy that I often use is to compare, you don't ever think of aviation and think about people doing interventions to make aviation, air travel safer, because we recognize that there's a whole system in place. And we wouldn't say, oh, okay, there's something flawed, so let's do an intervention to make those TSA agents, improve the amount that they catch. We expect that the system works. And I think part of the shift, in the thinking, we've come a long ways from thinking about road traffic injuries as being accidents and being completely unavoidable, to recognizing that there's a science and there's a system in place to prevent crashes from occurring, but also leading to deaths. And what I think we really need to move to is to get people, and I recognize your point, that the constituents have to also demand safety. People have also to start saying, it is unacceptable for you to plan a school zone where you're allowing speeds that go way too fast. And yes, we have to intervene because right now we have to, but in the long run, we also have to get people to start saying, that is unacceptable for you to do to begin with, and we demand better from government, and we expect that you put in these measures to begin with, as opposed to coming afterwards. But I think that's part of the tension that we're experiencing, because we know that there are so many problems and we want to fix them all. But we also, at the same time, have to keep sort of, a big picture and start thinking about what it is we have to fix in the system as well, so that they don't continue to be a problem, and we have to continue to intervene.
No, I'd like to add to what Nan is saying about the public transportation policies. When we talk about the scenario in Latin America, and so I have a colleague here from Colombia and Brazil, and so I would like to raise the issue of related to the motorcycle issues in the region, so that when we talk about the deaths and the challenges, we still are facing a big challenge, and so the increased number of deaths related to the motorcycle, although we are doing better in when we talk about other users. And so I also would say to change this mentality, so how can we work with SDG 11.2 also to provide safety and affordable public transportation? I think it is another kind of different way to think, and so to put together this not individual motorized way, and so how can we work to change this reality? Because the solution now for most of our population is to buy a motorcycle because it's more affordable than to buy for a ticket for going in a bus or public transportation. So that's another issue that we have to work and advocate for better public transportation.
Right. No, thanks for that. And Kelly, did you?
I just wanted to comment on Nan's comment that unfortunately we do have to undo all of the work that's been done in many of the cities. I think when we talk about evidence, what's the evidence of how we can scale that up? And I think we're still trying to figure that out. But when you look at the example of Fortaleza, they've reduced road traffic fatalities by 32% in the last couple of years by really scaling up some of the work that had been done previously. But you've still had to undo some, you've had to go back and reduce speed limits. You've had to go back and redesign roads. But how can we figure out a way of scaling up so that Fortaleza is influencing other cities around Brazil, if not the region, and other cities around the world as well?
Right. No, that's a really good point.
I was just going to agree with Kelly and say that absolutely, and I think that's why we have to do both. And I think that's the tension we have now, because we're often talking about what can we do. I think it's unfortunate that we actually are faced with a reality where we have all of these systems that are completely flawed. I mean, when you go to any place, it's Fortaleza, and you're absolutely right, we have to now go back and undo that. But we also have to think at the same time about how can we advocate for this not to be the norm, and that we have to go back and advocate. And so I completely agree, and I think that's where we have to work at two levels, thinking about what do we do now to fix the current problems, but also what can we do to prevent the problems that we see now from occurring. And I think it's important to keep that perspective, because systems evolve, and transportation and mobility will continue to evolve. And what's important is that we keep in mind the things and the values that we have to ensure in order for systems to be safe as they evolve.
Yeah, and now to carry that point a little further, I mean, to do that, to implement all this, you need strong local institutions. How do we achieve that we know that the majority of road traffic deaths occur in low and middle income countries. They have other competing priorities in addition to road safety. A lot of their development is usually guided by donor funds and donor priorities. How can these countries achieve what we're saying they should be doing? I mean, I'm sure we don't have all the answers here, but any thoughts on how road safety could be prioritized over other issues? I'm not saying that other issues are not important, but how do we focus on building institutions? And I'd just like to remind everyone in the audience that there's a mic. If anyone wants to participate in this discussion, ask follow-up questions, please feel free to pitch in as well.
So I think that's the million-dollar question, Abdul, in the sense that how do we get road safety to become institutionalized? And I think you've heard from the panelists here who basically said that you have to really engage a number of sectors, and that's been one of the challenges. I mean, I think what Luis was saying was the importance of getting political will and the constituent support to have that as an agenda. I think one of the challenges is actually defining, the roles for everybody, and being able to link road safety. The way that we talk about road safety. Let me start again. We talk about road safety because we're public health. We talk about number of deaths per 100,000 population. That's because we're public health. These indicators and this language may not resonate with others. And part of what I think we have to do is to be able to contextualize or talk about what we consider road safety in a way that resonates with other actors. So as I said, if we're talking about people who are building roads, their main concern is building roads. We want them to build roads that are safe. But their primary mandate is to build roads. And what we want to do is to say, your primary mandate is to build roads that are safe, right? And that's not necessarily the case now. And I think it's the same for automobile makers, it's the same for industries and so forth. And I think the challenge is to be able to get everybody to see safety as a value, and then to be able to operationalize it in their own respective ways. As a public health community, we may be focused on certain interventions because we see them as being important. But the interventions that Michelin or other industries make may not be the exact same ones. But we have to provide a space where they feel like everybody has a role. I think the challenge right now is we're talking about we need to engage with other sectors, but we want them to engage in what we do. But I think we want to engage them, but everybody has a different role and a different action to carry out. And that hasn't, I think, come out as clearly as I think it could. And that's, I think, part of the reason why we have some of the challenges.
Yeah, I think that obviously political will is essential, and agree with your point exactly that we have to use a frame of reference based on who we're talking to, thinking about, ministers of finance that are financing the roads in countries. What is the cost of GDP to a country that has really high road traffic fatalities? The World Bank did an economic report about a year ago, and there was a 17 to 22% reduction not in GDP, 3 to 5%, I believe. Don't quote me on the numbers, but that we're trying to make an argument of the economic costs of road traffic injuries and fatalities to a country. So, but building institutions, it's one, finding your champions as well within different ministries, making sure that they have the support, the technical support, but also then having the advocates to really push governments. And that's why NGOs play a critical role in pushing governments to prioritize based on what we know, and we know that road traffic injuries and fatalities are a very high burden on many governments, all governments, as a matter of fact.
É interessante essa questão de como você dá escala e como você garante uma institucionalização do tema segurança viária na gestão das cidades. E o tema
It's interesting how you guarantee this theme, the institutionalization of this issue in the matter of cities.
Eu gostaria de fazer uma reflexão.
I'd like to reflect on something.
No caso de Fortaleza, eu posso dizer que o ponto de partida foi uma visão do prefeito Roberto Cláudio, que é da área de saúde pública e que teve a compreensão inicial do problema.
In case of Fortaleza, the starting point was a vision from the mayor, Roberto Cláudio, who is a PhD on public health. So he had the vision towards the issue very clear.
Mas como garantir que essa política continue com o próximo prefeito, independente de qual partido, de qual ideologia? E eu creio que a única resposta é obtendo apoio popular e fazendo com que o tema agregue capital político aos prefeitos que virão. It's difficult to translate.
And how to guarantee that this same priority is going to be given to road safety by the next mayor. And I think that the only way is to gather public support from the population, and to make this political capital.
E como fazer isso? Em Fortaleza nós temos um exemplo. Fortaleza repete dentro da cidade o padrão que há no mundo todo. A área mais pobre da cidade concentra a imensa maioria dos acidentes.
Okay, and how to make this in the city? Like Fortaleza, the area, the higher income area in the city concentrates the larger number of accidents.
No, the opposite.
The lower income.
The lower income, yes.
The lower.
Yes. Então, ter o apoio das pessoas das áreas periféricas é fundamental. E isso aconteceu em Fortaleza.
Okay, thank you. So to have the support from the people from the lower income areas, is very important for the cause.
E como isso aconteceu em Fortaleza? As intervenções, principalmente as intervenções de desenho urbano, elas vinham junto com outras intervenções que eram importantes para aquelas pessoas. Iluminação pública, limpeza urbana, um redesenho de toda a área. Você trazia um conjunto de benefícios e as pessoas passaram a associar ações de segurança viária com um conjunto de benefícios para a vida delas. E isso se transformou em capital político.
Okay. What happened in Fortaleza is that in these areas where interventions were made, they didn't come as interventions only. Improvements were made in the areas, such as
Public illumination.
Public lighting and squares, better equipment, like nicer places for people to walk, nicer sidewalks, and a whole redesign of the area. So people associate the intervention on the roads with these benefits. So from then on, they want that to be made in their places, in the places where they live. And this becomes a political capital for the person who
Hoje, quando nós vamos fazer alguma intervenção nessas áreas, eles demandam faixas de bicicleta, demandam travessias elevadas e coisas que até pouco tempo atrás eles não falavam. Eu acho que esse é um dos caminhos para você conseguir esse apoio político e dar escala às ações de segurança viária.
So I think this is one of the ways to bring these improvements together, because now when we make some interventions on the roads, people demand bike lanes, people demand elevated crosswalks, and so they understand and thinks that this is one of the ways to scale up the gains on that.
So that's very interesting that you bring up. I mean, because we heard, you need political commitment and none mentioning that you need demand for safety. And with one person's vision, you were able to start some interventions and then have the public appreciate and acknowledge their importance to their daily living, and now they're demanding these interventions as well. So that's a really good example. I think we had someone, Connie had a question or a comment.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the great discussion. I have a question for Nan or anyone else who wants to answer. So I love that you said we need to hold other sectors accountable, particularly alcohol industry and motor vehicle industry. So we know from an array of studies that alcohol industry has been promoting non-evidence-based interventions, undermining population-based interventions that are effective. So my question is, how do we go, knowing this, how do we go about holding these sectors accountable? And a more controversial question is, do all players actually have a role in road safety policy and programs, as was discussed later on? Yeah.
Thanks, Connie. That's no. I mean, in all seriousness, I think that's a really great question, and I think it's something that we struggle with continually, because I think, as road safety has become much more visible in the global agenda, we know that industries such as the alcohol industry have become much more engaged in this topic, and there's interest. And it's because I don't need to explain why. I mean, but we know here, because we all know that alcohol is a leading risk factor. Drink driving is a major problem. We know that as much as 15% of all crashes, fatal crashes, involve alcohol. And of course, it's in the interest of industry to show that they are involved, and corporate social responsibility and all of that. And I guess the point is that, where we have to draw the line, I think there's two things, there's two parts to your question. I think we as a public health community have to recognize where we draw the line. I think that industry does have a role to the extent that it's limiting its actions where it's doing what it's doing. So if we're talking about alcohol marketing, we don't control alcohol marketing. Public health people don't, but they do. So can we encourage, if the industry really wanted to take action that were, leading to improvements, they would reduce the marketing. They would themselves reduce the sales, hours of the sales. But that's not what they're doing, right? So I think the answer to your second question is yes, I actually do think that each industry has a role because the way that they operate has a direct impact on the road safety outcomes that we're interested in. So if vehicle manufacturers actually focused on the technologies that were actually beneficial, that were life-saving, instead of focusing on things like let's be more connected and let's actually have more fancy dashboards that look like iPads that are actually causing distractions, I think we would be in a different place. So I do think that industry has a place, has a role, but I think that's different than saying that industry has a role in public health or road safety interventions or road safety activities. I think the industry has a role in doing how it operates, because the way that it operates actually does have a consequence and does have an impact on the public health and safety and the road safety outcomes. I think we as two parts, essentially when you talk about governments and governments holding industry accountable, governments have a responsibility to set up firewalls to ensure that industry does not, cross that line. Governments have a responsibility to ensure or to do the things that we think are effective, that they should be regulating alcohol sales. They should be limiting advertisement of alcohol to minors and so forth. They're all a number of things. But essentially, governments are motivated and are accountable to their constituents. So I think part of that is ensuring that the public is aware and that there is a public demand for regulations, stronger regulations, and the public has an understanding of what those regulations mean. So I think that the way that you hold industry accountable is actually by a more informed public that is able to then demand better and stronger regulations. And that seems like a very hard thing, but I think we have successful examples from tobacco where we know that this does work, this can work. That if you have a strong demand and a political push, that it is possible to hold industries accountable. It is possible to put into place tough regulations. But that has to come from an informed public. And that's exactly what industries are doing. They're trying to confound the situation by saying that we actually care about road safety. And of course, I would say that, yes, these private sectors don't want people to die. But at the same time, the private sector wants to increase their sales. They want to make money because that's the principal objective of these corporations. It's not to ensure the safety of populations, it's to increase sales of their products and to make more money. So there's an inherent conflict between what industries, their primary mandate, and what they see as a secondary sort of purpose, which is to let's promote and let's prevent people from dying. And I think that's the conflict. And part of what I think governments have to do is to make sure that that line is drawn very clearly. And I think governments need an informed public to be able to take strong positions. And I'm not saying it's always the case that you have to have strong political will with constituents, but I do think that a lot of governments need the courage to do so because it's not always easy. I mean, it's a tough question.
Yeah. Good job on that answer.
Thanks, Nan. Eugenia, did you have? No.
Well, just to add something, I think that's a big challenge when talk about the alcohol. And so some countries in the region the economy of some countries in the region are related to the alcohol industry. And it's a big challenge to make a difference when you have this kind of economic situations in conflict. And so I would say that we make progress when we talk about seat belts, helmets, and shoulder restraint. When we are talking about drink and drive and speed, I think we have less progress in the region because we are related to the kind of big conflicts. And so it's more easy to improve this behavior, to use seat belts, use helmets, etc. But when we talk about drink and drive and talk about speed, And so it's not easy to face these challenges, and so we need more voice when to talk about the vulnerable, when to talk about the other, when to talk about speed, so in these areas. And so to give more voice for the vulnerable users, because more and more you have more voice from the industry, the cars, and so how can you put together these different interests, economic interests, and so with this kind of protective for our population. So it's just to highlight that's a big challenge, and so we don't have the correct answers, but we are trying to work with the other sectors to help us to have this solution and provide more safety.
Okay. I believe there's another comment.
Yes, I would like to really thank this distinguished panel for sharing all the wisdom. I still have one question lingering in my mind. I think everybody in public health tends to say political commitment is important, and then we need the support of the society. I think pretty much any field you're working in, these are going to be important. In your collective wisdom and experience on road safety, what have been really the critical things that have raised the matter of road safety to the public agenda in the places where that has happened? Because there are also many other countries where there's lots, newspapers every single day are full of reports of, unsafe roads, and there will be a public outcry for a week, and then that's it. So what do you think, what really makes that critical change and to shift in to the point that you don't need a mayor who is, public health aware that the pressure from the people itself will put the matter on the agenda? I don't know if...
You see the difference in the questions when they're not scripted, right? If I can just give a quick answer to George's question. I think from my perspective, one of the things that we have to do is cross this boundary threshold, if you will, where we're talking about road safety and isolation and actually integrating safety and safety of roads into much broader agendas. So, I think part of the challenge is to identify how do you find the entry point. Maybe it's not, maybe some cities aren't worried about safety. And as a road safety person, I'm outraged by it because I think, oh my God, you need to be worried about road safety. But maybe they're more concerned about environment. Maybe they're more concerned about pollution. And we should be okay with that. Maybe we should, if that's the angle, to go into a city or a country and say, well, if you reduce the number of cars you have in a city, as they're doing in London, for example, because it's a major issue for them, what you'll find happening is that more people will be using public transport, and you have to make the transport options available. And you'll have less crashes because there are fewer cars, and people are going to walk and cycle more, and then they're going to be healthier, and you'll have fewer road traffic crashes. So I think one of the things that we have to do is be flexible and creative in terms of how do we communicate the topic that we want, and how do we ensure that it enters into various agendas, and recognizing that it may not always enter in the format that we think it should. It may not always be a road safety agenda. And I think that's okay. I mean, I think that's exactly what you've been able to do in Fortaleza without, making it explicit that was what you did. And in some ways, that's what Bloomberg Philanthropies is doing. You're integrating road safety into a number of different ways, and your work in cities is actually about making it a more mainstream, and it's integrated. And we recognize it, and we have discussions and we talk about it, in the context of road safety. But I'm sure other people will look at it and say, "Hey, great! Look how well it improved the flow of traffic in Fortaleza." I was at a meeting a while ago, and I had this Japanese colleague say, in the 60s, traffic in Japan was awful. It was like what it is, in many parts of Southeast Asia. And he showed this video where it was just pure chaos. And he said the solution was we built parks. And they built parks because they got the kids off the roads. And he said, and when we built parks and we focused on these pedestrian-only zones, we saw economic development as well, because what happens when you have pedestrians? Well, they want to shop, they want to stop in and buy, have drinks and so forth. So really, the argument that they made unintentionally was that if you actually focus on a number of other issues, you might actually talk about it in terms of stimulating local commerce in certain areas through pedestrian zones. You'll still have an impact on safety, and I think that's part of what we are realizing that we can do, and maybe we haven't been as explicit about it, but I think that the experience that we've heard from Fortaleza and that we know from other work really shows that it is and it needs to be mainstreamed, and it really needs to be integrated, and we ought to be opportunistic to say, hey, if somebody wants to work on environmental issues and take out cars, great, let's jump on that. I mean.
At Bloomberg Philanthropies, we really are just doers. Like, we talk about, getting the buy-in from the mayor, but once we have that, we run and we give support to all of the different sectors within the city to actually do the work that will save the lives. And I think from the work that's done with Louise's group, with the journalists, with media, with the police, there's synergy within those groups within a city that can bring people together, push the work forward, and really make a huge difference, like the 32% reduction in fatalities in Fortaleza. And I think in Fortaleza, you've seen a movement of people appreciating the work that's been done to build bike lanes, to reduce speeds on arterial roads, to provide pedestrian plazas and places for kids to play safely. So, doing it is very important. We also are advocating for example, safer vehicles, or ensuring that the data is out there. So from our perspective, providing the tools, providing the argument and the resources and the people to get the work done is really fundamental to what we fund.
And Kelly, while you're on that topic, Bloomberg Philanthropies has really been a key player in road safety for the past decade. And I believe many of us in this room are immensely grateful for your support. Part of the reason for that has been because Mayor Mike Bloomberg has always been brave, has taken risks and invested in areas that other people don't. But we do know that road safety is a key issue. It's a leading cause of death among children. The Global Status Report showed us that. How can the foundation stimulate other donors to get into this arena?
That's another $1 million question. We hope that, proving that what can be done to save lives. We have not focused necessarily on bringing in additional donors. We've supported road safety for 12 years and really learned a lot over the process of 12 years and have shifted our programs. And that's one of the great things about working at Bloomberg Philanthropies. And Mike's vision too is not everything is going to be perfect, and we can learn just as much from our mistakes as we can from our successes. What we need to figure out is how can we get governments to fund road safety, not other donors, because quite frankly, we've funded $259 million in 12 years. We estimate that we've saved over 125,000 lives, and we will come out with a new estimation in the coming months. But that's just a drop in the bucket for what's needed for road safety to really bring it, down on that list. It's currently the 8th leading cause of death, 1.35 million people dying each year. We need governments, not necessarily donors, to fund road safety. And that's something that we all collectively need to work on, to strategize on, to continue to push for, so that they prioritize road safety as an important public health issue.
Right, no, and that's a really important point. I believe it has come up again and again during this discussion that we need it localized, institutionalized locally to be able to achieve the goals that we set out to achieve. So while we're nearing the end of our discussion, I'd just like to go back to the first question about not reaching our SDG targets. Nan, do you think we need another SDG target, or would we be setting ourselves up again? Would it work as an aspirational target again? Do we need another decade of action? Where do we go from here?
Well, I can give you some very concrete answers on that one. So in 2020, the government of Sweden has actually proposed, and their proposal has been accepted by the United Nations General Assembly, to host a ministerial conference on road safety in February of 2020 in Stockholm, Sweden. And the purpose of that is actually to debate, discuss, and to come up with a vision for the next 10, 15 years. And part of that discussion will be whether or not we should have a new target. And I think the general consensus is that, yes, we do need to have another target for 2030. And yes, it does need to be ambitious enough so that it is both aspirational but also feasible. And I think that the general feeling within the global community is that even if we set a target of 50% reduction by 2030, it's actually achievable if everything that we're talking about today is put into place. And I think that's the second part of that answer, is that I think, in 2015, we were able to convince the global community to say, put road safety on the development agenda. And I think they took that at face value and said, yes, we agree, you have the numbers, you've shown that it's an important cause of death and it's going to hinder development. I think the way that we're going to move forward is not just to get a target. We actually have to be able to answer the question, how are we going to do that? So I think in 2015, people were convinced because we said, look, this is a really big problem. You have to make it a development issue. And people said, yes. I think this time, they're not going to let us off the hook as easily. I think they're going to say, okay, you got your chance. Now you're saying you want another chance. And I think we have to take that second chance and say, yes, we want a second chance, but here's also how we're going to do that. And I think the challenge for us here in this room, but more globally, is to actually be able to document, as Kelly said, what has really worked, what we have learned from this, and then be able to come up with the second half of that narrative, which is to say, yes, we absolutely need another target, and this is what we've learned, and this is how we're going to achieve it. And I think that unless we actually answer that question, this is how we're going to achieve it, I think having a target is not going to solve alone won't solve it. So I think we have to do the homework and we have to answer that question as well.
On that note, I'd like to turn to Louise from the experiences at the city level. Are such SDG targets helpful for city level work, or are they distracting? Are they detached from local realities, or do they help you galvanize support around this issue?
Eu creio que os objetivos sustentáveis, eles nos ajudam a colocar isso na agenda, mas é necessário muito mais do que isso. A colocar o tema na agenda, mas é necessário muito mais. Nós precisamos traduzir esses objetivos sustentáveis em ações concretas que as pessoas percebam e que percebam como uma melhoria para a sua qualidade de vida.
We need to translate them into concrete actions that people can perceive them as an improvement on their quality of life.
Por isso que é tão importante, foi tão importante o apoio, tem sido o apoio da Bloomberg e todos os seus parceiros. Se você olhar para o caso de Fortaleza, como eu falei, o prefeito é uma pessoa que entende o assunto porque é da área, mas se você olhar o conjunto da sociedade, parte da imprensa, parte da academia, enfim, eles não dão o devido valor ao tema. Se você comparar, está um pouco longo, mas você vai entender. Se você comparar, por exemplo, as causas de morte em Fortaleza, você vai ver que acidentes de trânsito superam, por exemplo, vários tipos de câncer, Zika, dengue, e normalmente esses outros temas têm uma exposição na mídia muito maior, tem uma exposição de pesquisas acadêmicas muito maior. Então há uma certa inversão.
Me ajude aqui, tá? If you look into Fortaleza data, you see that fatalities in traffic is much higher than Zika virus, than dengue, all these numbers. But these these numbers, they don't get into the media or into academic research, or as these diseases or these this type of public health issues get. So if we could have, in our case, we have a mayor who is from the area of public health, but if we could have more people understanding and putting the things in the right place, that would be very helpful.
Então eu insisto que a melhor forma de avançar nessa agenda, e aí volto para a pergunta, é olhar para os objetivos sustentáveis do milênio, que são tão importantes, mas traduzi-los em coisas que as comunidades pobres, por exemplo, onde acontece a maior parte dos acidentes, percebam que aquelas ações são benéficas e apoiem e demandem essas ações. Eu acho que isso que vai colocar a roda em movimento.
Não vejo muito problema de 80% desses casos em Fortaleza serem motos.
Não chega a ser...
Let me just,
Okay.
he asked, isn't it important that in Fortaleza, 80% of these cases are from motorcycle accidents?
In fact, it's something like 51%, but it's a huge problem. Okay, but more than motorcycle, it's a problem related to the poor areas of the city, because in the poor areas of the city, they are the areas we have more motorcycles. You know.
But it's still, the SDGs are very important, as Luis said, as a guide, but and to make as a goal for us. But what we do need to do is to turn them into concrete action, so people could feel that their lives are better, and then they demand these improvements for their lives, for their areas, for their community.
Eugene?
I'd just like to add this answer about the SDGs, that how helpful was at country levels as well. And so just your questions about city level, but I would like to add that for us, as regional office of WHO, so to have this targeting as SDGs help us to include this in the health agenda more and more in the countries with other issues. And so when you talk about road traffic, in the SDG we can, I would say we have the same parameters to talk about the maternal mortality, etc. What raise for us these issues in the health agenda at country level, and to go for local level as well as a health sector.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little unfair on the SDG since we had 10 years taken from us on the road safety side. But if you think about road safety 10 years ago, we were nowhere near where we are today. So we think, we have to reflect and say, thinking about other injury issues like drowning prevention, they're always like, road safety gets so much attention, we get none. And so we need, to work to continue to build on that momentum and get as much attention. And I think having an SDG for 2030, absolutely. Like we do need to have those targets. Thinking about, you asked about a decade of action. I would be curious, and we don't have to go, we'll talk about this later, but what did the decade of action do for road safety? Obviously, we've had much more attention in the last 10 years. How much did the decade of action bring to that? How much did SDGs? But the bottom line is attention is one thing and we need action. So we need to really translate the attention into specific actions by government.
Right. Thanks, Kelly, for that. I believe that was a perfect concluding did you? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. From Bogota, one of our biggest challenge is to align all the visions in the different levels. For example, if we have a country whose main goal is to increase the speeding by building big highways, so we'll never have this speed management policy in other places. So we need to align these efforts that we do locally with the national level. If we have a private sector focus more on competitiveness, and they think that to be competitive is to go faster in the roads, we need to change their minds and to show them that there are other ways. So that's the reason why we work with the private sectors in this network of companies that want to do the things right. And we show them the importance of an approach in Vision Zero. Also, we are working in the road safety plan because our big concern is that our mayor ends his period by the end of this year. So we need to prolong this work with these entities, and the private sector is very important because they will keep working in the city. And the national level will adapt Vision Zero as well, and this safe system approach based in what Bogota did. So we need this work, and we are running out of time because we need to show them the importance of do the things right.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that. And the key would be to make sure that all these issues are internalized within the various institutions so that even with change in leadership, then this work can continue. Well, thank you to all our panelists for this great discussion. As Kelly, you just said, we've made great progress in road safety. We're not where we want to be, but we've made great progress. We have a discussion that has gone further than we ever imagined it would. We have actions that have taken place at local city levels, national and regional levels, and even globally. And we need to continue this work. We've learned a lot. We've faced a lot of challenges, and we need to learn from our challenges as well. So with that, I'd like to really thank you all for coming here, giving up some of your very valuable time to be part of this panel. But this is by no means the end of this discussion, and I hope we can keep having such challenging discussions to be able to take this issue further. So please join me in thanking our panelists today. And at this point, we've all heard about the example for Fortaleza, how the city under the leadership of Mayor Roberto Claudio has been able to achieve successes in road safety, especially the 32% reduction in fatalities. Even in the individual risk factors, you've been able to bring down drink driving prevalence rates to 1%. You've been able to increase helmet use to 92%, for example. Seatbelt use has increased to 93% in just 3 years. So I'd like to, on behalf of the International Injury Research Unit, on behalf of the field of road safety and all our partners here, really congratulate you on this. And we had anticipated that the mayor will be here with us. We do understand that he has not been able to make it, but we would like to, we hope that Luis, you'll accept this award on behalf of the mayor. This is the Johns Hopkins International Injury Research Unit Award for Leadership in Injury Prevention that we're giving on behalf of the Injury Unit to Mayor Roberto. And I'd like to invite our panelists to join me in recognizing the city for their work. Thank you very much. This is not joined, so you'll have to hold both pieces.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank on behalf of our mayor. I know it's a very difficult challenge. I know we are a city from a developing country with a lot of problems and challenges, but I know it's a process that has started with your help, but you have to move forward. And I'm sure that the next technicians, the next politicians, now they have to move forward because society is embracing this issue as a point of their real life. So it matters. It does matter.
No, thank you for all your work, and I believe all the partners and stakeholders do appreciate the example that you've set for other cities to follow, and hopefully people can learn from your example.
Thank you very much.